So you mentioned the AAA situation where WWE is buying AAA, and that is supposed to happen later this year. I'll tell you where I was when I saw this. So it was WrestleMania night one. I was at a meet and greet for the Ringer because I have friends who work for the Ringer, and I wanted to support their meet and greet with their fan base. It was really, really cool. There was probably like, I don't know, about 60 or 70 people there. So nice little get together. I got to see some friends, obviously my buddy Ben Cruz, David Shoemaker, the Masked Man from the Ringer. Who else was in there? Kaz, who used to write for WWE. He was there. Cal, Brian Waters, Cam Hawkins, a lot of folks who are affiliated with the Ringer who I think are really cool. So I'm watching the TV and I'm getting texts at the same time with people saying, what is this AAA thing? And so I'm watching the TV and I see all of a sudden I see like it's like Stephanie Vaquer,
Dorian rolled on.
Yeah, who's the young flyer for Vikingo? I see Vikingo, and I was like, "What Vikingo?" So
who look way smaller than I didn't think. That guy's tiny, man.
So I'm just watching this thing, and I'm like hitting Shoemaker. I'm elbowing him because he's the Ringer's main guy. I'm like, dude, check this out. And it's like, where did this come from? Now, Dave and I talked to Conan on the air. We did an interview with him. It's probably like 2 or 3 years ago now. And, it's the same old thing where Conan's like, oh, yeah, we're talking to U.S.-based companies. And, we're trying
That's
to bring
been going on for 20 years.
Forever, right? That's always the story. What Conan was telling us at that time was, so Netflix has this show called Drive to Survive, which really helped the popularity in the United States of F1. And he was like, yeah, we were talking to some of those guys because they were thinking about the how do we enhance the popularity of Lucha Libre in the US? And obviously that's what Conan's been dying to do. So he was like, yeah, we're just talking to people and it's kind of interesting. And, Netflix is real. And obviously then Netflix brings WWE to do that stuff. Of course, they went after the big company. But now if AAA is under WWE's umbrella, theoretically they could do stuff on Netflix with Lucha Libre and AAA. But like you said, how does this always end? Which is the group that sells, eventually they're just all going to be gone. Like, I don't know what Conan's deal is. I don't know if Dorian is going to stick around. It's going to be all WWE guys running this stuff, which takes away the culture unless they keep some of the people who understand that, which I think they will have to, at least in the beginning, because they're kind of going into this blind. Like Triple H just talking publicly about this is clearly going into this stuff blind. He doesn't really know the difference between AAA and CMLL. Like I sort of felt like he thought maybe they were buying CMLL instead of AAA.
You know what? I got to give him credit though, because during that introduction, he tried his damnness to say Hijo del Vikingo. He tried, but his brain wouldn't give it to him. So he just called him Vikingo because he paused for like his brain is, but it's like that Vikingo. And it's like, okay, I'll give you credit. You at least tried because I saw you struggling. But no, inherently it cannot work, even if Paul wants it to work, because there is so many things that are going to come out of this as a consequence. For example, what if somebody's getting over in AAA? Like, what are you going to keep them in AAA, the lower brand? You're going to bring them up. So already inherently it's going to be a feeder system. That much we could say, right? Just because of the way the business works, and it's like you as a Dodger fan, if somebody's tearing it up in AAA, you're going to bring them up. You're not going to leave them in AAA. Yeah. So the minor leagues are always going to be the minor leagues. They can't ever be more than the minor leagues by default. And that's what AAA is going to become. Now, they need to keep some people that understand the culture of lucha, because it's not like WWE. Only WWE is WWE. And if they start thinking they could do better, which was a Vince McMahon thing, then we're gonna have things like what happened with Super Astros in the late '90s.
Oh my gosh!
Or the AAA working agreement that they had in early '97, you know. But
remember when Court Bauer talked Vince into bringing Super Porky and like the minis over, and like it was like sometime in the mid 2000s. Like
I remember that, yeah.
you saw these guys and they were just jokes. They were there for comedy. They weren't there to actually be wrestlers.
Because Vince McMahon grew up that these men need to be they're children, right? They have the mind of kids, and they're marketed towards children. Whereas the minis in Mexico are actual good workers. They're adult grown men who happen to be of miniature status, and so it's a different philosophy, you know. But there's it got so much going against it, so much, you know. And I always tell people, what happened with ECW? Remember that ECW on Sci-Fi? That was going to be unauthentic. We had the zombie, you know. It's like, what happened with the UWF when Crockett bought it? You know, he squashed all the guys at that Starrcade.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just happened. WCW, the greatest example of all time. And my concern is that the guy Philippe is working everyone. That's my biggest concern, because he looks like a carny, no matter how, you know, and I hope that Dorian or the Roldans, I feel like they're under the impression that WWE is going to invest money into it, but not necessarily take control of it. And that's very manipulative. And I could see this becoming a catastrophe for everyone involved, because I could see WWE thinking, "Oh, that's our company now," you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. And also, because this is going to take over, this is going to start in the third quarter of this year. I think they jumped the gun a little bit on this, or a lot actually, in this announcement, because I don't know if it's personal stuff with AEW or all that, but I just feel like they spoke too soon, and before they really hashed out all the details, and it might come back to bite them.
I think they did it because they knew they were going to get the most coverage of the entire year during WrestleMania, because I did see it in what we would call the trades. You know, people who don't have any idea what this is were writing it. So I think that's why they did it. You know, you said something that made me think about what probably is like maybe the best possibility here, which is NXT Mexico with Rey Mysterio in the Shawn Michaels role.
Well, he definitely needs to retire, man, because that guy, you touch him now and he has an injury. So
I don't know if Rey wants to do that. I threw him out because he's Shawn Michaels, like, in that he's been with this company for so long. If you want the cosign of somebody, Rey Mysterio's name has equity with Mexican fans. So if you go, no, look, Rey's it's you're in great hands with Rey, they will at least give it a chance with Rey, because of what he means to Lucha Libre.
You know, one thing that Paul and Paul has gone on record, and I really like how for good and better or worse, because he showed how much of a little dick he had over WrestleMania week, all over his media calls, but he also showed a lot of like authentic like attitude towards the business that Vince didn't have. For example, he was very sincere as far as like he's gonna be different, he's gonna be more open to different styles. And you know, he said it with conviction. It wasn't like a company line, you know, because he would get frustrated, and he's frustrated at like he doesn't like the Bischoffs of the world that go into this podcast and they have all the solutions to everybody's problems, but they don't look at themselves. I mean, he was cutting some crazy ass promos all weekend. And I think if he's really going to be open-minded, he needs to trust a lot of these legends that don't have the big international name, like a Negro Casas, you know, or even like a Land Lover, who has a lot of equity in Mexico. Like these guys, if you bring them in and you give them a little bit of the reins, they'll help you make sense of all this. But I just feel like WWE is so much ingrained with that. If you don't do shit here, you've never done anything in the business. That these guys who really know the business in Mexico, they just won't get a chance. But if he's open-minded and he brings all these older guys, like they could really make it work, you know. So hopefully